The morning sun reflected off the crystal-clear waters of Newport Harbor, Rhode Island, creating a golden spectacle that would normally enchant me. But on that July Saturday, I could barely appreciate the beauty surrounding me. My hand trembled slightly as I adjusted my purse strap, watching the imposing yacht Golden Horizon anchored at the most exclusive pier in Newport Harbor. "Breathe deeply, Isabella," I whispered to myself, trying to control my nerves. This was supposed to be a celebration. Our second wedding anniversary weekend that Nathaniel had planned as a surprise. When he told me we'd be spending it on his family's yacht, I should have been excited. Instead, dread filled my stomach like cold stones. The 180-foot luxury vessel gleamed white against the azure backdrop, its sleek lines speaking of old money and established power. The Kingston family had owned yachts for 3 generations, and this latest acquisition was Victoria's pride and joy, a floating palace worth more than most people's houses. "Mrs. Kingston," Captain Thomas Mitchell's warm voice called from the deck as I approached the gangway. His weathered face broke into a genuine smile, the kind that made the corners of his eyes crinkle. "Welcome aboard. Mr. Nathaniel is already here with Mrs. Sterling Kingston." I forced a smile, though my chest tightened at the mention of my mother-in-law. "Thank you, Captain Mitchell. Beautiful morning, isn't it?" "Indeed it is, ma'am. Perfect conditions for sailing." He gestured toward the gangway with practiced courtesy. "Right this way." As I stepped aboard the polished deck, the familiar scent of sea salt mixed with expensive wood polish filled my nostrils. The Golden Horizon was undeniably magnificent. Every detail spoke of luxury and refinement, from the pristine white leather seating to the gleaming brass fixtures that caught the morning light. "Isabella!" Nathaniel's voice carried across the deck, warm and welcoming. My husband emerged from the main salon, looking relaxed in his navy polo and khakis, his brown hair slightly tousled by the harbor breeze. For a moment, seeing his smile, I felt my anxiety ease, but that relief was short-lived. "Nathaniel, darling." Victoria Sterling Kingston's voice cut through the air like a blade wrapped in silk. She appeared behind him, immaculate as always in her cream-colored linen ensemble, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the coastal breeze, her ice-blue eyes fixed on me with unmistakable disdain. I wasn't aware we were expecting guests. The word guests dripped from her lips like something distasteful she needed to spit out. My cheeks burned with embarrassment, but I maintained my composure. "Good morning, Victoria," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Thank you for having me aboard your beautiful yacht." "Having you?" Victoria's perfectly arched eyebrow rose as she approached, her heels clicking against the deck with military precision. "Oh, my dear, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." Nathaniel stepped forward, confusion clouding his features. "Mother, what are you talking about? I told you Isabella would be joining us for our anniversary celebration." Victoria's laugh was like crystal breaking, sharp and brittle. "Anniversary celebration? Nathaniel, this is the Kingston family's annual board retreat. We have serious business to discuss about the company's expansion into the Miami market. This is hardly the time for domestic distractions." The words hit me like a physical blow. In front of the crew, in front of my husband, she had reduced me to nothing more than an inconvenience. "Isabella is my wife," Nathaniel said, his voice gaining strength. "She has every right to be here." "Rights?" Victoria's voice rose slightly, though she maintained her composed facade. "The Kingston family has certain traditions, certain standards. This yacht represents our family's legacy, our business empire. We cannot have—" She paused, her gaze traveling over me dismissively. "Unauthorized personnel disrupting our proceedings." Carmen Delgado, who had been quietly arranging flowers near the salon entrance, suddenly found something extremely interesting about the deck railing to examine. The other crew members I could see had similarly developed urgent tasks that required their immediate attention, though I could feel their discomfort radiating across the deck. "Mother, that's enough," Nathaniel said, but his voice lacked conviction. I could see the familiar internal struggle playing out across his features, the boy who had never quite learned to stand up to his domineering mother warring with the man who claimed to love me. "Is it, darling?" Victoria moved closer, her voice dropping to a more intimate tone that somehow made her words even more cutting. "Perhaps you've forgotten that this yacht, this company, this entire lifestyle you enjoy, it all comes with responsibilities to maintain the family's reputation and values." The subtext was clear as the morning sky. I didn't belong to their world, never had, and never would. I think, Victoria continued, her voice returning to its public volume, it would be best if Isabella returned to shore. Carmen can call a taxi. There are lovely shops in downtown Newport where she can spend the day while we conduct our business. The dismissal was so casual, so complete, that for a moment I couldn't breathe. 2 years of marriage, 2 years of trying to fit into Nathaniel's world. And this was how little I mattered. I was being ejected from my own anniversary celebration like an unwelcome stranger. Isabella, Nathaniel began. But I could already see the resignation in his eyes. He wouldn't fight for me. Not really. Not when it meant standing up to the woman who controlled his trust fund and his future. It's fine, I managed to say, though my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. I understand. But as I turned toward the gangway, my cheeks burning with humiliation and my heart breaking just a little more, I caught Captain Mitchell's eye. There was something there. Surprise, concern, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Behind him, Carmen had stopped pretending to arrange flowers and was watching with an expression I'd never seen before. "Ma'am," Captain Mitchell said quietly as I passed him, "perhaps you should— the taxi will be here shortly." Victoria's voice cut across his words. "Carmen, please escort our guest to the dock." As I walked down the gangway, my legs feeling unsteady beneath me, I heard Victoria's voice carrying across the water behind me. "Now then, Nathaniel, shall we discuss the Miami acquisition? The Hendersons are expecting our call at noon." Standing on the dock, waiting for a taxi I didn't want to take, I stared up at the golden horizon and wondered how many more humiliations I was expected to endure in the name of love. 3 hours later, I sat in a quaint cafe on Thames Street, nursing my second cup of coffee and trying to make sense of what had happened. The historic cobblestone street bustled with tourists, their laughter and conversations creating a stark contrast to the turmoil in my heart. My phone had buzzed twice with texts from Nathaniel. Half-hearted apologies that felt more like obligations than genuine remorse. "I should have stood up for you," his latest message read. "Mother is just stressed about the Miami deal. We'll talk tonight." Stressed about a business deal. As if that justified treating me like I was invisible, like I didn't belong in my own husband's life. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard, unsure what to say. What could I say? That his mother's behavior was becoming unbearable. That I was tired of being treated like an outsider in my own marriage. Isabella Torres Kingston. I looked up to see Maya Patel approaching my table, her dark eyes filled with concern. My best friend since college looked effortlessly professional in her navy blazer and jeans, her press badge still hanging from her neck. She must have been covering some event nearby. "Maya!" I stood quickly, grateful for a familiar face. "What are you doing here?" "I was interviewing the mayor about the harbor renovation project," she said, pulling out the chair across from me. "But more importantly, what are you doing here looking like someone stole your puppy? Isn't this supposed to be your anniversary weekend?" The concern in her voice nearly broke what little composure I had left. Maya had always been able to read me like an open book, a skill that had made her an excellent investigative journalist and an even better friend. "It's complicated," I began. But Maya was already shaking her head. "Complicated how? You texted me yesterday saying Nathaniel had planned this romantic getaway on the family yacht. You were excited." I filled her in on the morning's events, watching her expression grow darker with each detail. By the time I finished, Maya's jaw was set in the way that usually meant trouble for whoever had crossed her path. "That woman is unbelievable," Maya said, her voice tight with anger. "You're his wife, Isabella. You have every legal right to be on that yacht." "Legal rights don't mean much when your husband won't defend them," I replied bitterly. Maya studied my face for a long moment. "You know what? Screw this. I'm not letting Victoria Sterling Kingston treat my best friend like garbage." She pulled out her phone and started typing rapidly. "Maya, what are you doing?" "Research," she said without looking up. "Something about this whole situation feels off. Why would she be so desperate to keep you away from a business meeting? And why today, specifically?" Before I could ask what she meant, her phone rang. Maya answered immediately, switching into her professional reporter voice. "Jenkins? Yeah, it's Maya. I need you to pull everything you can find on Kingston Maritime Holdings, especially anything about recent acquisitions or deals in Miami. She paused, listening. No, not for a story. Personal favor. 20 minutes? Perfect. She hung up and looked at me with determination. Jenkins is my contact at the financial district. If there's something big happening with Kingston Maritime, he'll know about it. Maya, I don't want to cause trouble. You're not causing trouble. You're uncovering it. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Jenkins, that was fast. What? Are you sure? Maya's eyebrows shot up. When did this happen? And the Kingston family doesn't know yet? My stomach clenched as I watched my friend's expression change from curiosity to shock to something that looked almost like disbelief. Maya, what is it? She held up a finger, still listening intently. No, I understand the confidentiality issues, but this is huge. Okay, I owe you dinner. She hung up and stared at me for a long moment. Isabella, I need to ask you something. And I need you to think carefully before you answer. The seriousness in her tone made my chest tighten. Okay. Has Nathaniel ever mentioned anything about your father's business dealings? Specifically, anything about Torres Construction and Development? My breath caught. My father had built Torres Construction from nothing, starting as a day laborer and eventually becoming one of the most successful contractors in Southern California. He'd passed away when I was in college, leaving the business to my uncle Miguel, who had expanded it throughout the Southwest. Why would you ask about my father's company? Maya leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper, because according to my source, Torres Construction and Development just became the majority shareholder in Kingston Maritime Holdings as of this morning. The world seemed to tilt around me. That's impossible. Uncle Miguel never mentioned. The acquisition went through a subsidiary called Horizon Holdings. Apparently, it was set up specifically for this purchase. Isabella, if this is true, it means what? Maya's eyes were wide with disbelief. It means you're not just Nathaniel's wife. As of this morning, your family effectively owns his family's company, including that yacht you were just kicked off of. The coffee cup slipped from my numb fingers, clattering against the saucer. Everything from the morning suddenly made horrible, perfect sense. Victoria's desperate need to keep me away from the business meeting, her panic about unauthorized personnel, the way Captain Mitchell had looked at me, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. They knew, I whispered. Victoria knew about the acquisition, and she knew who I was. She must have found out this morning, maybe right before you arrived. That's why she was so determined to get you off that yacht. She couldn't risk you discovering that you now technically own the vessel she was trying to throw you off of. My phone buzzed with another text from Nathaniel. Mother says the Miami meeting is running long. Don't wait up tonight. I stared at the message, anger slowly replacing the hurt and confusion. They were still on that yacht. My yacht, apparently, conducting business meetings about a company that my family now controlled, while I sat in a cafe feeling sorry for myself. Maya, I said, standing up with new determination. I need you to drive me back to the harbor. Now we're talking, she grinned. What's the plan? I'm going to pay another visit to the Golden Horizon, and this time I'm not leaving until I get some answers. As we hurried toward Maya's car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months of dealing with Victoria's hostility. Power. For the first time since I'd married into the Kingston family, I held cards they didn't know I had. It was time to play them. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Newport Harbor as Maya and I approached the Golden Horizon for the second time that day. But everything felt different now. I walked with purpose instead of trepidation, my shoulders straight, and my head high. Maya had printed out the acquisition documents at a nearby business center, and they were tucked securely in my purse like ammunition. You sure you want to do this alone? Maya asked as we reached the dock. I could come with you for moral support. No, this is something I need to handle myself, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. But thank you for everything. Just remember, you belong here more than any of them now. Don't let Victoria intimidate you. As I approached the yacht, I could hear voices carrying across the water from the main deck. Victoria's clipped tones were unmistakable, along with several male voices I didn't recognize, probably the Miami investors Nathaniel had mentioned. Captain Mitchell spotted me first, his weathered face breaking into what looked like relief. Mrs. Kingston, he called out, moving quickly to the gangway. Welcome back aboard. Thank you, Captain, I said, noting how his entire demeanor had changed since the morning. Gone was the apologetic deference. Instead, he treated me with the kind of respect reserved for someone important. "The family is in the main salon with their guests," he said quietly. "Shall I announce you?" "That won't be necessary. I'll announce myself." I could hear his quiet chuckle behind me as I crossed the deck toward the salon. Through the large windows, I could see Victoria holding court at the head of the polished mahogany table, gesturing animatedly, while Nathaniel and 3 men in expensive suits listened intently. Charts and documents were spread across the surface. Clearly, the Miami acquisition meeting was in full swing. I paused at the entrance, taking a deep breath and gathering my courage. Then I stepped inside. "Gentlemen," Victoria was saying, "I assure you that Kingston Maritime's expansion into the Miami luxury market will yield unprecedented returns. Our family has been in the maritime business for 3 generations, and we understand." She stopped mid-sentence as she noticed me standing in the doorway. Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, annoyance, and then something that looked remarkably like panic. "Isabella," she said, her voice strained but attempting to maintain composure. "I thought you had returned to shore for the day." "I had," I replied calmly, stepping into the salon. But something came to my attention that I felt needed immediate discussion. Nathaniel looked up from the documents, confusion clear on his face. "Isabella, what are you doing here? Mother said you understood that this was a private business meeting." "Oh, I understand perfectly now," I said, moving to the empty chair at the opposite end of the table from Victoria. "In fact, I think these gentlemen might be very interested to know exactly who they're dealing with." One of the investors, a distinguished man with silver hair, looked between Victoria and me with growing curiosity. "Mrs. Sterling Kingston, perhaps you could introduce us to your guest? This is my daughter-in-law," Victoria said quickly, "but she's not involved in the business side of our operations. Isabella, perhaps you could wait in the guest cabin while we finish our meeting." "Actually," I said, settling into the chair with deliberate calm, "I think I'm exactly where I need to be. Gentlemen, allow me to properly introduce myself. I'm Isabella Torres Kingston, and as of this morning, I represent the controlling interest in Kingston Maritime Holdings." The silence that followed was deafening. Nathaniel's mouth actually fell open, while Victoria went completely rigid, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the table. "I'm sorry," the silver-haired investor said slowly, "but I think there's been some confusion. We were told that Mrs. Sterling Kingston here represents the Kingston family interests." "She does," I replied smoothly, pulling the documents from my purse and placing them on the table. "However, she no longer represents the controlling interest. As of 9 a.m. this morning, Torres Construction and Development, through its subsidiary Horizon Holdings, acquired a 51% stake in Kingston Maritime Holdings." Victoria's face had gone completely white. That's impossible. "I have the paperwork right here," I said, sliding the documents across the table toward the investors. "I'm sure your legal team will want to verify everything, but I think you'll find it's all in order." The lead investor picked up the papers, his eyebrows rising as he scanned the contents. "This appears to be legitimate," he said to his colleagues. "The acquisition was filed with the SEC this morning." "Isabella," Nathaniel said, his voice barely above a whisper. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't know," I replied, looking directly at him. "I only found out a few hours ago, after your mother threw me off this yacht for being unauthorized personnel." I turned to address the investors. "Gentlemen, I believe there may have been some misrepresentation about who has the authority to negotiate on behalf of Kingston Maritime." Victoria finally found her voice, though it shook with barely controlled rage. "This is preposterous. Some paperwork filed this morning doesn't change decades of family business relationships. The Kingston name means something in this industry." "You're absolutely right," I agreed. "The Kingston name does mean something, which is why I intend to honor the legacy while bringing fresh perspectives to the company's operations." At that moment, Carmen Delgado appeared in the doorway, her usual reserved demeanor replaced by barely contained excitement. "Excuse me," she said, looking directly at me, "but Captain Mitchell asked me to inform you that your Uncle Miguel is on the phone. He's calling from the jet. Apparently he'll be arriving in Newport within the hour to discuss the transition." The room fell silent again. Even I was surprised. Uncle Miguel hadn't mentioned flying out personally. "Thank you, Carmen," I said, standing gracefully. Please tell him I'll meet him at the dock." I turned back to the stunned faces around the table. "Gentlemen, I apologize for this confusion. Perhaps we should reschedule our meeting for tomorrow morning, when my uncle and I can properly discuss Kingston Maritime's future direction with you." As I moved toward the door, I paused next to Victoria's chair. "Oh, and Victoria," I said quietly, so only she could hear. "Next time you want to throw someone off this yacht, you might want to make sure they don't actually own it." I walked out onto the deck with my head high, leaving behind a room full of stunned silence. Captain Mitchell was waiting by the rail, and for the first time since I'd known him, he was grinning broadly. "Ma'am," he said with obvious satisfaction, "will you be staying aboard tonight?" "I think I will, Captain," I replied, looking out over the harbor that suddenly felt like home. After all, there's a lot of family business to discuss. Behind me, I could hear heated whispers and the scraping of chairs as the meeting dissolved into chaos. But for the first time in 2 years of marriage, I felt like I finally belonged exactly where I was. The golden horizon was mine now, in every sense that mattered, and Victoria Sterling Kingston was about to learn that the woman she'd tried to dismiss wasn't going anywhere.